Hi everybody, my name is Megan. Welcome to Worldbuilding from Development to Marketing. I'm going to take this off because all I'm going to do is clap with it, so yes. Thanks for taking the time to attend this chat. I know GCAP is every hour is precious, but I'm really appreciative of your time. If you'd like to ask any questions, I've heard mixed reviews on the Q&A thing on the app, so feel free to just raise a hand and we can jump straight to it. I don't really mind. I've got this bipper thing, let's give it a go. All right, about me. So it's amazing to see a lot of friendly faces. Thanks for showing your support, I really appreciate it. I've worked in the video games industry for over 13 years now, specializing my marketing background specifically in brand communications as well as advertising, and even dabbled in events and activations over the years, and I've had the privilege of working for some incredible companies and franchises along the way. You think I could do that off by heart without looking at my slides to talk about myself, but it's actually really comforting to have a little bit of notes up here. But essentially, yeah, I'm a product marketing manager at PlaySide, spearheading the brand strategy with an amazing team alongside me on the first-person shooter Mouse PI for Hire. But before that, I spent over 4 years at EA Firemonkeys, helping craft what The Sims means to the world through the live service mobile experiences of The Sims Freeplay and The Sims Mobile. There's been a good mix of indie to mobile to double and AAA, PC and console games in my career so far, and I've built some really fun and detailed go-to-market strategies, along with managing the execution of fully integrated campaigns from end to end, regardless of the budget. So essentially, the reason why I've chosen this topic today is because I've been really inspired by my career trajectory so far to really talk about this. During my tenure at EA, and even PlaySide for the time I've been there already, I've learned a lot about the value of thinking bigger than just highlighting some of the new and exciting features and benefits of live service content updates to some of the most hardcore fans I think I've ever come across. The Sims community, self-proclaimed as Simmers, are no joke. If you've ever scrolled on their social media in the comments section, whenever they post something exciting for new content or new expansions, they're just like, yeah, and we've been asking for this forever. What else have you got? And so there's a lot of passion in there, a lot of fire, but I think there's a huge percentage of Simmers out there that have literally been playing the game longer than developers have been working on the project. So they know it so deeply, and so you got to get it right. The storytelling is extremely critical to communicating the new content that we're releasing. But so every time we released a new update, whether it just be new content or features, we knew that by looking at our in-game telemetry and just data for the player engagement, as well as all the online sentiment around what kind of content the community were really going to love. So furniture packs, clothing, accessories, build mode items, and what really resonated with our audience was actually showing what value it adds to the game and how it expands the world they've dedicated so much time and passion to making their own. Appealing to why Simmers play and whether they were what we would categorize them into our audience segment buckets as either a stylist, a storyteller, or a builder. Maybe a blend of all three, because pretty much everyone really is. But it allowed us to go deeper into leaning into their core motivations. And so highlighting the lore and the brand vision and all your brand, your core pillars of the brand, allowed us to go deeper into leaning into their core motivations. I've read that already, awesome. But yeah, working on such a prolific franchise genuinely cemented the trajectory of my career. And I think it was really my first ever experience of seeing the power of how world building can really create a community and bring a franchise to life. Cool. So let's begin. So because of that, that's just the context around it, but this is how I've structured this chat. In this presentation from Worldbuilding from Development to Marketing, I want to explore the impact of expanding above your standard marketing strategy by using world-building techniques to engage audiences and maximize your cut-through. So consumers are offered so much choice in how they engage with games, so it's important for both marketers and game devs to be thinking forward with an innovative mindset of brand building during development, regardless of what genre you're making. So the topics in this preso are something that I wish I'd learned in the earlier years of my career. I genuinely use these techniques every day in my current role and wish I'd learned them sooner. And so by the time I finish, no matter what discipline you actually are, is that hopefully you can take something from something along the way. But essentially, the pillars are where world building fits into your marketing strategy framework, the benefits of establishing your game's brand identity, and how to set your game apart, but factoring in world building techniques during development to create richer, more immersive brand experiences outside of your game. And finally, any marketers in the room will know, how can we measure success and back ourselves with the reason why we're spending so much of our time and resources, but like having trackable goals to prove that this works. All right. Yay, graphs. All right, the state of the industry. So everyone in this room is in the games industry, so it's safe to say there's a pretty strong understanding of just how challenging it is to release a game on any platform really, and have it make a significant amount of traction and cut through, regardless of your marketing budget. There were over 18,000 games released on Steam in 2024. I'm sure we've read the stats on SteamDB, but essentially it's over 1,000 a month and more than any other year to date. So studio restructures and layoffs in the headlines in any other week paints a picture of today's ecosystem, especially if you caught Monday's keynote all about that. So just to keep it real, I guess, like video games are competing for a slice of everyone's time amongst apps, TVs, board games, trading cards, film, all of that stuff. And so it is really just competitive to make sure that make cut through with whatever you're pushing out there. But one thing is to be said is that the growth trajectory of the global gaming sector is set to rise from over 345 billion AUD to over 450 billion by 2030. Game development is not slowing down, and so we need to set ourselves apart. So to set our game out and succeed, having a distinct and authentic brand identity for driving an emotional connection with your audience is more critical than ever. Intentionality is the difference between a one-hit wonder and a world that players never want to leave. Marketers can't rely on a one-fits-all strategy, and we need to deeply understand not just what your target audience plays or buys, but how they want to discover new games and what kinds of experiences make them feel understood. In an industry where 80% of Steam releases fail to generate even $5,000 worth of revenue, branding isn't a luxury, it is survival. Let me see. Cool. So before I jump into world building and brand identity and how they can help with all of that, I want to show where it fits into your strategy. Regardless of what genre you're developing a game for, it's never actually too late to start thinking about it and implementing the fundamentals into your plan. I'm going to be spending all of the talk really on the main three sections here, and really not talking about product strategy or marketing strategy, because essentially product strategy is directly related to the development of the game. Like, we're not really here to talk about that. There's other professionals to do that this week. But its functionality sort of really focuses on functionality and improvement over time. Marketing strategy is really the planning of your campaigns. So once we do all this fundamental planning and strategy work, all of what we're going to be doing is driving your strategy and decision making within your marketing campaigns. So that's like your tactical execution. And I'm super happy to chat about either of those any other time. But essentially, where I'll focus today is how world building and brand identity fold into your brand strategy. So world building is increasingly recognized as a key strategic component. Doesn't matter if it's video games, electricity, cars, whatever sort of industry. It really is the evolution of brand storytelling or brand narrative. And it fits in at the highest strategic level, directly influencing and informing the creation of your brand identity. Sweet. All right. So world building. All right. Isn't it just another marketing buzzword? Well, let me explain how it can directly apply to marketing and show you how narrative, setting, and lore, tools traditionally used in game design, can be strategically adapted to brand development and campaign planning. Have you ever wondered why certain brands and games just click with people? Well, it's not because they just make great products. It's because they've created an incredibly immersive world for their audience. As consumers and fans in our own right, every single person here, we know We actually know what brands and games we feel best represent us, our beliefs, our passions, our interests. And we know which communities we belong to, who our trusted sources of information and entertainment are, and above all, how we choose to spend our time and money. We actively choose to use brand choices to help define us as individuals. So world building makes you feel something. You know what it feels like from a consumer's perspective whenever you buy anything. It's like you're discovering something brand new and exciting, pioneering through something that someone else is creating and you're a part of it all, like a brand new IP launch, and you're on that journey with them. Players want to get lost in the fantasy, being surrounded by a community of people that also love it and want to share that with everybody else. A strong brand fosters community, and an engaged community fuels longevity. So when you step into a world, it's not necessarily about the world itself, but the storylines, the characters, the themes, the real-world issues, the context and cultures, all articulated in that world. So why is it important? World-building fundamentals sit within brand strategy framework, and it is an approach that helps define a cohesive, authentic universe around a brand. A brand isn't just a mood board coming to life or a campaign with a longer tail. Instead of pushing out messages, we need to draw consumers in. Instead of creating campaigns around content, we need to build worlds. And by that, I mean brand world building should be shifting your perspective from simply promoting your game to exploring a broader narrative. The mission, the world, the characters, they all have as much value as the actual core loop of your game. World building just isn't just for big and established IPs. Small studios should be considering building their brand presence even before their game launches. Unlike tech, where branding's primary goal serves to clarify what a product does, like why you should care, how it works, gaming branding is the product. It's literally inseparable from the experience. All right. So the fundamentals of world building. Let's get to the good stuff. This is basically the structure that I use to flesh out the core pillars of a game. And so I've segmented it into 4 sections here, and that is the brand strategy framework, which is the 4 Vs, marketing stuff, it's really cool. Brand identity structure, or the model, such as brand as a product, organization, person, and symbol. Writing your origin story, so building out your lore and narrative, working with your narrative team if you have one to do that. And finally, content strategy. So making sure that wherever a consumer is discovering your game and across every single path to purchase, so pre-purchase, purchase and post, that you are consistent every step of the way. So let's talk about it. The 4 Vs. All right, we have here, I'll just read off the slide. All right, values. What are the core principles that guide the brand's actions and behavior? Vision. Does your game have a higher purpose, not just filling a gap in the market? Voice. This is my favorite one. What and how you communicate feeds into the overall perception of your brand. And visuals. Everyone knows this one. It's super easy. The visuals. The cohesive visual identity that represents your values and personality. All right. So values. Establishing brand values for your game will give it a sense of purpose and direction. Communicating them clearly and often allows your community to connect with those values. They should be more than just words on your website and be more like behaviors that become habits for everything you do. So it's like establishing non-negotiable rules, like a framework, and these guide every action and decision within the world. It would be something that you would be folding into your product strategy around the game's lore and the way the game functions as well. What kind of games do you want to be associated with, like your competitor set? And what kind of players do you want as to be a part of your community? Are you really targeting, what kind of audience segments are you visualizing with this? And what are the qualities that attract players to your game and keep them coming back? Vision. This is the narrative you use to communicate essential moments in your game's origin, core beliefs, and the purpose of your brand. By sharing why you exist, what you stand for, even the direction of where you want to go, you create an open environment where players can get to know your world on a deeper level. Why does your game exist? Where are you headed? What's your North Star? What are your passions that drive the narrative? What impact do you want to make? And what problems are you actively trying to solve? A brand vision should take into consideration a higher purpose and encompass your brand personality with an emotional, social, and self-expressive benefits. And in doing so, your game can build and maintain awareness, perceived quality, association, and loyalty. Voice. All right, everyone knows this one. I reckon it's one of the most recognizable kind of touch points, the kind of brand pillars that when you're following your favorite game on social, like you kind of read their social posts like with their voice in your mind. Like that's the sort of tone we're looking to achieve. A brand's voice here informs the type of messaging a developer should use when communicating on public player-facing platforms. It often plays the biggest role in forming connections with consumers by fusing your brand's personality and behaviour with its core values. A strong brand voice might remind you of your sarcastic sidekick or reassuring doctor or a kind teacher. Whether it's quirky, conversational, professional, or finding a voice that speaks directly to your target audience, like breaking the fourth wall, it helps build recognition and trust. A distinct and identifiable visual and verbal style that creates instant brand recognition, no matter the platform. All right, and visuals. How your game presents visually is essentially what this is. It's like from the store page to the in-game experience, and it's the first way a potential consumer can understand what you're all about. It's creating a cohesive visual identity that represents your values and personality, which should resonate with your target audience. Brand identity is so much more than a good aesthetic and a well-written narrative. For example, the art style you've chosen is not going to sell copies on its own, but what will is the reason you're sharing with the world why your brand exists and what problems your game is here to solve, built directly off a meaningful mission, vision, and values. All right, now you've got to do the hard work and write the narrative, write the lore. The foundation of world building starts with creating narratives that align with your brand values, that meet your audience's needs. Like I said earlier, you've got to work with your narrative team to do this so you're in sync together if you have one, but otherwise it's essentially just making sure that your compelling narrative guides every communication touchpoint from your media pitches to get press coverage to social content. By building your strategy around core narratives rather than a tactical execution, which is just like chucking up a live stream or posting on social, you'll generate more meaningful coverage and stronger audience engagement. Yeah. So a lot of developers and of course marketers have a strong baseline understanding of the importance of marketing and how to go about it. But a great game is more than just a product. It is a universe, it is a culture and an identity. A great game is more than just a product. I've just read that all right as well. The best marketing doesn't just sell a game, it takes players on a journey to see it something bigger than themselves. Marketers often think in terms of channels or campaigns under tight deadlines and budget pressures, but in contrast, players tend to think in terms of affinity and only catch fragments of a carefully crafted marketing campaign. So they might just catch like a paid media ad here and a social post, and that touch point, that only interaction is what can form their gut feel for a product, a game, good or bad. All right, the brand identity framework. This model is the unique set of brand associations that represent what a brand stands for and promises to its players. It defines the organisation and distinguishes itself apart from competitors. This is supposed to be complementary to the 4 Vs. It's organised around these 3 loops in the circle called brand essence, which is the innermost layer. It represents the soul or the core DNA of the game, and it's often actually just a single concise sentence, like a phrase. The core identity, which is the outer loop centre one there, it's timeless, central values of the brand that justifies the brand essence. So it just kind of like expands ever so slightly and elaborates further. The extended identity though, which is just like the most vague word ever, but the elements that provide additional context and completeness, it adds detail and associations to make that brand more interesting, memorable, and connected to the customer. And it's composed of the remaining associations from the other 4 perspectives on that side that are not deemed to be central enough, but are really important to have noted and like as part of your overall brand expression. And I can talk about that in a second. The overall identity is analysed using 4 perspectives. So that's that side of the slide. Brand as a product, as an organization, as a person, and a symbol. And you should break your game's identity into these 4 important parts to maintain a consistent experience. The more time you spend fleshing this out and locking it in, the more consistent your player-facing messaging will be when you are planning on how you're talking about your game in the market. So essentially, I've done a cheeky example of The Sims Free Play because it was top of mind. So essentially, the brand essence, which is where the picture is in the middle, the brand essence, my phrase, is that you would create a unique world of Sims that's an expression of you. Or something similar like make custom Sims, build incredible homes, play with wife. It's really literally like that one sentence summarizes the whole game as a takeaway. The brand core, so in the middle, these ones are more like words, just actual, you can kind of see on the other slide where it's like attributes, organizational, attributes there. And so the core of The Sims Free Play is it's really central around life simulation and control, like you play as God. Unrestricted creation and customization is another example, and it's a safe platform to express yourself, explore any story, identity, and lifestyle, experimentation and storytelling. And extended identity. So that's the outermost blue one. So the personality of The Sims Free Play, it's witty, playful, creative, and accepting. Relationship with the player who is playing as God. User segments are usually just like what I mentioned earlier, which is the storyteller, which is like the director of the drama. You are the one that moves the strings. The builder, who's the architect of the world, and the stylist. So the designer trying out all the identities and lifestyles. Yeah. All right. Your entire customer journey needs to be on brand. The tangible touchpoints surrounding your game should all be taken into consideration across pre-purchase, purchase, and post-purchase. Once a game is live, branding shifts from launch buzz to long-term engagement, building emotional connections, fostering player loyalty, and keeping the conversation alive. The strongest gaming brands don't see post-launch engagement as an afterthought. They actually create dynamic ecosystems that feed interest, shape discussions, and turn players into brand advocates to keep the life cycle of the game alive. So building fandom, though, isn't really about flooding people with promos, like it's on sale now, go grab it. It's actually about creating a real emotional connection. So players actually expect brands to be active participants in their gaming culture, seamlessly distilling marketing into storytelling and community engagement and shared experiences. I think we all kind of love it when our favorite games are well supported post-launch and like not just regular updates and stuff, but transparent communications on social about how development's going and like what we've been up to and new trailers and like bug fixing and stuff like that. But it also shows the dedicated community that your relationship isn't just a one-off transaction. Once you've bought the game, you're actually, the studio, the developer is dedicated to their product, and plan to make improvements to make the game as good as it can be based off their feedback. Now, I'm talking about transmedia, and I've got a slide about licensing and merch because I feel like it plays a huge part of like actually why this work, this like fundamental baseline that you're building out and how you can scale it over time. And it might not be suitable for everybody from the get-go in the early stages of their life cycle, but it is important to understand where the value actually lies and recognize if it's right for your game. While it's not immediately accessible, setting up your brand to capitalize on these opportunities in the future is actually always worth considering from the get-go. But what transmedia actually is, it's not putting your game on like having your game promoted on all these different touch points and having it on like paid media or on YouTube, and everywhere else. That's actually like omni-channel marketing, like multiple channels. Transmedia is actually the process where integral elements of your game's lore are dispersed across multiple delivery channels for the purpose of creating a unified and coordinated entertainment experience. So each medium takes its own contribution to the unfolding of the expansion of the story. There generally isn't one single source where a consumer can turn to gain all the information needed to comprehend that franchise's universe. So, for example, I wanted to bring up Cyberpunk 2077. It's actually a game with content updates and DLC, an anime series on Netflix, a comic book series, you guys all know it, but obviously The Witcher, which according to Newzoo is actually top 3 of the world's most recognizable transmedia IPs. And it started obviously out as a Polish fantasy novel series, which then became a game that took the world by storm and evolved into a TV series, an anime, a digital and physical Gwent card game, collectible figurines, and so much more. But the reason why I'm so passionate about transmedia, I freaking love it. I think it's an amazing tactic because it's perfect for expanding the potential market for an IP by creating different points of entry for multiple audience segments. Not to mention helping sustain a franchise through potential spin-offs, extensions, and sequels, sub-brands, you name it. For example, Marvel comic books, which obviously make Spider-Man canon. There's comic book spin-offs for literally every audience segment. Spider-Gwen for the girlies, and even for the kids, there's Amazing Spidey on Disney+. So they're really catching all the kids straight as they're out of the womb. Literally, I think it's something for everybody at every age demographic. And I think the fact that they can bring you along the journey of that franchise from the second that you're born. It's they've done a really great job at the transmedia. But essentially, I think it's something to consider, and it's pretty exciting. Happy to chat further. And licensing. So beyond the game, brands need to live everywhere. Merch, sports, esports, or just esports, streaming culture and community experiences are crucial. From licensing deals to product collaborations and brand partnerships, companies are diving headfirst into licensing, turning franchises into global empires. When it comes to brand licensing in video games, the key is picking brands that resonate with your players. To create a game that grabs their attention and keep them hooked, you need to know what your audience loves. What are they passionate about? What brands do they love? What makes them tick? This goes beyond just their age. It's really understanding on a deeper level what their interests are, what are their behaviors, and what motivates them. So for example, if your game is aimed at Gen Z, you might want to partner with brands in fashion or gaming tech or cultural things they care about, like sustainability, just to give a trope to Gen Z. But licensing attracts more players. When a game strategically partners with a well-known brand, it instantly grabs the attention of that brand's loyal fan base. This means that the game reaches people who might not have otherwise turned the other way, boosting visibility and player base. It also allows the brand to benefit from the extra exposure, boosting brand recognition and brand awareness. It enhances storytelling and gameplay. So by adding branded content like recognizable characters, famous locations, or iconic products, can make a game world feel even more alive and engaging, especially when it taps into nostalgia or personal interests. Cross promos and activations. I feel like we could all ramble off a few we've seen out in the world. One of the best parts about licensing is how it paves the way for unique promotions, special in-game events, and limited time items. Ultimately, these collabs keep the game feeling fresh, exciting, and full of possibilities when it works. Crucially, they also help with generating buzz across social media and marketing channels, sparking conversations and engagement. It's the best when two of our favourite brands can come together. Good old Dave the Diver, slaying it. Drives revenue. So players are often drawn to exclusive branded content like special skins, limited time DLC, or collectibles tied into a brand they love. This exclusive content not only makes the game feel more personalized, but gives the player something to show off and builds credibility and trust. When the reputable brand is linked to a game, it instantly boosts the game's credibility. Players are more likely to trust a game that's partnered with a brand they already know and love. But ultimately, a game with strong brand associations is often viewed as more reliable, giving it a better reputation in a crowded market. And when things don't work out, the video games movie adaptations curse is a real thing, and not all PR and marketing efforts in video games can be successful. I actually have no positive impact on the IP. So some of the most highly anticipated titles have faced huge failures, not only because the games didn't live up to expectations, but because the marketing efforts were unable to properly align with the final product. broken promises to mismanaged messaging, PR campaigns often collapse when they fail to match the marketing hype with the consumer experience. And I think a lot of us can think of some common mistakes that have occurred with some of our favourite games, like a misalignment with cross-promotion collabs versus audience needs and wants, like who asked for this? And perceived value and proposition of pricing discrepancies, like when things are just too expensive and not worth. So promising too much sets everyone up for failure. So make sure you're focusing on what the game can actually deliver, avoid misleading consumers, and you'll turn trust into something that cannot be easily restored once broken. All right, let's get to some good stuff. So, Mouse PI for hire. I've put together a couple of slides of PlaySide's highly anticipated publishing title to show how an indie studio in Poland has built a strong brand world that has resonated across marketing channels and with their players even before it's launched. So for those that don't know, Mouse is a guns-blazing, jazz-fueled adventure where you'll experience the charm of hand-drawn rubber hose animation and explosiveness of a first-person shooter in a gritty tale of crime and corruption with a cartoon twist. And not to mention, the protagonist, Jack Pepper, aka Pepper Jack, is voiced by some random guy called Troy Baker. I don't know. But let's start with the project's origin story. A lot of what I'm going to talk about really does go back to the 4 Vs and a little bit of the brand essence because they've done such deep fundamental planning around the universe of this game even before PlaySide signed it. And so it's a beautiful game that was literally inspired by the lead art director discovering this BioShock fan art by someone on Reddit, and it just stuck in his mind forever. He literally it sat with him, and he came to his team about it, and they made that sketch up the top there. And there's something in this. Let's see how we go. And they started working on a demo, and that's how it was born. But essentially, while working on the prototype, Fumi posted their first tweet in December 2022, which is that one down the bottom there. A couple of months later, their lead programmer posted something really rough, on Twitter, and it completely popped off. From there, it skyrocketed. It created a sort of snowball effect. Fumi got the attention of gamers, publishers like PlaySide, investors, and press from all over the world, and the origin story was pretty much just viral content. And from the very beginning of development, the Fumi team knew that by standing out in today's market really required more than just a cool art style alone. We had to do a lot of work to really convey that this wasn't just a fun art project, and it was actually something that was going to grow and become a fully fleshed out game. And so they did a lot of work focusing on the movement abilities, upgrades, detective elements, the NPC interactions, the mini games, and the grouping storyline, which I'll talk about in a sec. But we really want the players to immerse themselves in the world of Mouse and make them feel like they're playing something really special. Gameplay is really what makes or breaks a shooter, so the team prioritizes the fine-tuning of weapon parameters, animations, which are all done by hand, as well as their sound effects and VFX to make sure the combat is unforgettable. But all those pictures there, like on the sides, the graffiti, the cosplay, and this sound effects specialist in another country, this is all just user-generated content we've discovered online as we're posting trailers and stuff. This guy on the bottom right was doing his own sound effect matching up to one of the trailers. It is one of the most magical pieces of video I've ever seen. But people are really inspired by the art style, and I think it's really exciting to see. So Mouse takes place in Mouseburg. It's a fictional 1930s American city where the society consists of mice, rats, shrews, and other animals. But the city itself is slowly rising from a recent economic crisis with all the ups and downs of those times. Even though the game is packed with humour and cartoonish elements, we're really not avoiding serious topics like political extremists, racial segregation, poverty, and social inequality. So in a way, Mouse is pretty dark and twisted, especially of that 1930s interwar period. But old mate Jack Pepper, he is a World War I veteran who became a PI after coming back home. He's assisted by his trusty sidekick Tammy, who finds himself knee-deep Jack finds himself knee-deep in a sticky fondue of celebrities, mobsters, dirty politicians, and a conspiracy aimed at taking over the US. Tammy is our hero's trusty sidekick. She's a young mouse orphaned as a child whose mother Jack knew. While she doesn't participate in investigations or gunfights, she actually makes Jack's life a lot more easier. She's really good with mechanical stuff like upgrading weapons, inventing new gadgets, and improving old ones. She can do it all, but just don't ask her to make a cup of coffee. All right, the art style. So we can address the elephant in the room here, I guess. People tend to forget that the 1930s and 1940s, many American studios adapted rubber hose animation. It was associated with cartoons by UB Iwerks, Fleischer's, and Disney, and it really hasn't changed since. There was no copyright on the style on the style holistically. The Fumi team get a lot of questions regarding the Steamboat Willie, and when they started work on Mouse, it actually was still copyright protected. But yes, the game features rubber hose animation and mice, but it's very different from Disney's work in all the key points. And they've developed a really unique art style, which you'll see on the right, which is like their character sketches. Yes, but literally everything is animated by hand, every single frame. I'll quickly touch on 3D environments because I'm no pro, but essentially while using sprite-based enemies in a 3D environment, it's quite common for the modern throwback for shooters. They want level art to match the 2D elements as much as possible, so it actually makes it easier for players to identify like what's interactable and where they should go next. I think that was like the hardest thing they had to navigate as a black and white game. And the music. Oh boy, I can't wait for you guys to hear it. We've actually captured a live band and doing all the music from scratch. It's hugely inspired by the era, and it plays a huge role in every video game, and Mouse is no different. I think we're using a mix of licensed music as well as original. It's just going to be amazing. All right. Home stretch. Measuring success. Now, this is one thing I feel like I have been challenged by managing upwards and managing expectations within a team of what marketing can contribute to the success and drive revenue for a studio. I think the biggest question we always get asked as marketers is like, how do you know if your marketing campaigns are successful? Like, how can you truly measure brand awareness? It's like, how does world building drive revenue? And I think it's the biggest challenge that we have by justifying the impact of qualitative and quantitative data. And just like the resources we need to execute on all these things. And so it's been, I think one of the biggest challenges of my career to really sort of nut out the core pillars of how world building KPIs are really different to digital traditional marketing KPIs. So before you press go on your marketing campaign and start posting content on all your channels, it's actually really important to make sure you've set yourself up for the best chance of success. And I know everyone knows what SMART goals are. I think we have to do them for like self-reflections and product development, like our own personal development in your job, but it actually is so relevant to strategic planning. I think the framework is something that I literally use this every day. When we're creating campaigns for our next big beat that's coming up, regardless of how big or small it is, or budget or no budget, it doesn't matter. I think you should still be really focusing on like splitting out by hairs in these categories here. So we've got specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And so a contextual example of how you would do that is, say you're going to launch a game, just like, let's just strip it back to that, and you want to jump into Steam Next Fest because it is literally one of the best ways of getting people to play your game and putting a demo out there. And so maybe you want an increase in wish lists, just as basic as that, or even just people installing your demo. But you want to see an uplift of 20%. And so achievable would be, it's actually a low barrier to entry to be able to be part of Steam Next Fest, so that's something that you know you can do. And a relevant example would be you want to be part of that because that's like seasonally, that's where everyone else is doing that. So that's the tactic that players are looking to discover new things. They're open-minded. It's like part of the consumer consideration set. And time-bound is just putting a cap on it. So you keep yourself accountable to get it done. Yeah. I've left this in here, even though I'm not going to talk about it too much, but just to have the context around like traditional marketing KPIs and digital marketing. But across all the pillars of like the way a consumer would discover your game, you can really directly, specifically attribute really, really tight KPIs to all of these things. And that comes down to simple of like social media metrics, sentiment, engagement, press coverage, wish list, of course, and if you send emails, pre-orders, sales, all those really tangible things you can attribute data to. And like, that's really easy overall because there's so many tools out there to help you measure that and track that, and you should absolutely still be doing this. But when it comes to world building, it really is slightly different. And so I've categorized these in direct contextual relevance to world building. And so even though we would normally be tracking audience engagement with digital marketing KPIs, specific things that are tailored to your world building tactics would be something like engagement rates and community sentiment. Are they talking about the things that you are talking about in your comms and your player-facing messaging? Brand sentiment, so shifts in like positive or negative engagement. Surveys, if you send any of those out using interstitials, and even just Steam reviews, like just reading what people are saying about it. Are they getting what you're trying to talk about on your Steam screenshots and like all your channels? And if you got coverage from anybody at all, even if it was just someone sharing a press release that you wrote, did the people that were talking about it say the things you want them to say? Are they understanding your messaging? Like, is it, are they, pulling out the right messages you're trying to convey? And the last one that I swear by is in-game telemetry and game data. Did the players' behavior in-game reflect your marketing initiatives? Like if you're talking about any Easter eggs in the level or specific features or exploring certain levels, is that coming through in the game data? And the more you can spend time integrating those measurable parameters within your live events, like MTX and core gameplay mechanics, if you can do that during development and have those, like that telemetry trackable from the get-go before you launch, that kind of stuff will really help you have a baseline and a benchmark to go back to in the future to measure and track. So yeah, essentially, you've got to maximize your results and impact by constantly assessing the data and pivot along the way. It is okay to pause and change if things aren't working and it's not landing. Even just tweaking the way you're saying things and the tone of voice, you can stop and pivot. So something is not functioning, be prepared to adapt or discontinue. Knowing what to measure is critical for success, and remember that your best stories often emerge from real players' experiences, so make sure you're listening to what players are saying about your game, because it's something there could be a disconnect about what you think people are going to love and what they're actually loving. So yeah. The takeaway? Well, a great game sometimes just isn't enough. Players need to know why your game matters, what sets it apart, and why it's worth their time. In a world drowning in content, recognition drives choice. In an industry where players face endless options, only brands with an authentic identity, deep community roots, and cultural impact will stand the test of time. Thank you. Not a second over. How good's that? Oof, I think I got 5 minutes. Thanks. That's it. Cheers. Feel free to enjoy your Wednesday. Oh, hi. Yeah, I don't mind. I haven't looked. My phone is missing.
Is there a good time to start thinking about world building comparatively to the development of the game?
I think it should go simultaneously, symbiotically at the same time. I think once you're designing your product and the way you want it to function as a game, it should be looped in with the relevant disciplines to work alongside marketing from the very beginning to make sure that marketing can give their expertise alongside the game team giving their expertise to make sure that you're in alignment of how it should be perceived and how it should function as well. Yeah. But if marketing come in late, having the game team should be doing the fundamental baseline to establish the fundamentals from a narrative and game development perspective so that marketing can easily absorb and understand exactly where the direction they envisaged it to go, and then adapt a marketing campaign to suit and tweak along the way. Hello.
So usually media crossovers happens post-development.
Indeed.
Would you recommend looking at that kind of methodology prior, during development?
I think it should be considered while you're fleshing it out. It's not necessarily relevant until you have launched and established a really mature community, because if you're shouting down a hallway to nobody, the investment of transmedia is often not worth the return on investment, because there's no one there to appreciate it or get around the law or the execution of what you're planning to do. And so transmedia is really valuable to extend the life cycle. I think once a game is out, it's been out for a long time, and it's in that mature phase, I think when you've got an engaged audience and you've got heaps of really high quality Steam reviews and a lot of engagement, at that kind of point, engaging with your community and seeing what you feel is the right fit for the trajectory of your franchise or IP, and what you envision the next step for that game to be. Is it a sequel, a prequel, a sub-brand? And planning out a map of how transmedia could complement that and extend it and have a bigger impact when it goes to market. Yeah. Hi.
I guess just jumping a little bit off that, you were talking about why transmedia and licensing are compelling for audiences, but especially for smaller devs and publishers, it can be really hard to justify that stuff. Transmedia, you're talking about sort of a medium to long-term stuff, but licensing can be sort of more in the lead up to launch, it can be sort of in the short term following launch, but as far as I guess managing up or across with your devs that maybe don't appreciate the ROI, how would you recommend measuring and reporting success of going out of your way to do that licensing work on top of the world building KPIs that you mentioned?
It's a really great question, especially licensing. I think we have all taken a pin or a t-shirt or a bag or two at PAX Rising and all those things to support local devs. And I think licensing plays a part in the really early infancy stages to help self-promote and just putting the branding out in the zeitgeist and being a bit more visible and showing your passion and fandom for that small team. So obviously sometimes with merch, there's a budget outlay that you have to justify, but if you've got
is it about showing a bit of mix of quantitative and qualitative, as you go, this is how much we've handed out, this is how much we had, these are the remarks that I kind of heard on the show floor.
Agreed.
There's a mix of anecdotal in there, but I guess, in that space, how do you try and arrange that in a way that the devs kind of need, or, the executive team might need to justify that expenditure?
I think the license stuff, the merch, there's some kind of percentage you could track for conversion, hoping that the fandom of the product would drive conversion for sales. But I do think that's why it is risky at the beginning to go big, spend up big, because even though you can give it away for free or sell it, sometimes it does offset. Licensing can offset if you sell it at your booth, the cost for the booth stand. There are some fluid ways there. But with transmedia, I think it's a different kind of measurable objective that isn't suitable at the beginning of the life cycle of a game, and that would be something to expand and grow in the future to extend. But
Cool.
Cool. Thanks everybody. Appreciate it.